Jason, are you a big fan of going to the dentist?
Not at all.
Here's the scenario. You have a pain in a tooth. You call the dentist's office and they tell you, I've got an appointment tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Come on in and we'll get you taken care of. You show up
Yeah.
tomorrow at 4 o'clock and they say, oh, the doctor's not here. We won't be able to help you with that pain in your tooth. So you're going to have to come back tomorrow.
Yeah, it sounded a bit like AppleCare.
That's what we had happen, right? That's our concern about Apple, is that we're moving into this era where they aren't really focused on doing the right thing or the best thing for the customer, and that they aren't looking for reasonable solutions. Join us this week because we're going to talk about a scenario that's not quite as painful for Jason as a tooth would be, but definitely for a teenager, it was just as painful as having to go to the dentist. Jay, I wanted to start with some quick video editing feedback. Is it okay if we start with that?
Yeah, let's jump into it. You've been in front of the computer a lot the last few days.
I have. We had some technical difficulties with the audio last week on the show. That took a whole bunch of extra time. And then I did some video at a wedding for my sister, and I spent about 12 hours editing that footage and turning it into the videos. I was super, super tempted by the Neo. I'm no longer tempted by the Neo.
Right.
Two reasons. Number one is Riverside's all on Chrome, so I probably could do that on the Neo. I was hoping to be able to do that on my iPad, but it's all in Chrome. You can't do the editing in the iPad, which I just don't understand. It goes back to the conversation we had about, can you please make Safari on the iPad the same as
Right.
Safari on the Mac, or Chrome on the iPad the same as Chrome on the Mac at least? And no go. So yeah, I could do that on the Neo probably. I don't know if it would take longer or whatever, because I don't know quite how it processes and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
the biggest reason is when I was running the wedding footage, anytime I would want to stabilize the entire set of footage, which
Hmm.
considering my technique was a good idea, it was taking 5, 6, or 7 minutes. And this is on my M3 Pro. And the problem with that is you can't do anything else in DaVinci while it's doing it.
Mm,
So you got to either have other tasks to do or walk away. Same thing with any of the audio adjustments that I was doing. They didn't take quite as long, but still. And then rendering, even with my M3, was taking much, much longer than I
right.
expected. Now, I'm sure there's things I can do to tweak and refine and get better at that, but I just can't. I can't do that on the Neo. If it took 30 minutes to render a video on my M3 Pro, it's probably going to take 45, I would say,
Yeah.
on the Neo.
Yeah.
So it's just not an option.
Yeah. So I'm sure that it's possible to do on the Neo, but yeah, it probably would take 3 times as longer. So yeah, if
Yeah.
you're into video editing and things like that, just be conscious if you're looking to get the Neo, which shipping times are still they're still out there a few weeks, so you have time to decide.
I think you just have to be aware that it's just going to take longer.
Yeah.
Right. And so where I've got other things that I'm trying to work on all at the same time, I just can't lock up my machine for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So anyway, no go on the Neo for me. Just wanted to do that little piece of follow up.
Yeah, no, good tip. I mean, good real life experience, I'm sure there's somebody that's listening or watching that's, wanting to get into video editing. They probably wanna do some video photography and stuff like that, so, yeah, just know you can get the job done, but it's gonna take a while.
Yep. Welcome to Two Grandpas Talking Tech. I'm your host, Grandpa Greg.
And I'm your host, Jay Benjamin. Thank you guys for joining us again this week. Welcome back.
Welcome to everyone. I think we've got a pretty good episode that we're going to do today. So we're going to talk about one of Apple's services because we've both had experiences with it lately. But before we
Yeah.
do that, we don't want to be a news or a rumors show. So we're going to breeze through a couple of news stories. And then I've got a rumors game I'm going to play with Jason that he doesn't know about. So
Okay.
That's how we're going to handle rumors, at least for this episode. We'll see how it goes. But from a news standpoint, there's just three items of news that we wanted to just breeze through. Hopefully, this will only take a couple of minutes. Number one, ads are coming to Apple Maps. Not
Yeah.
cool. Just
Yeah.
not cool. Apple's going to come out and say it's good for businesses and for others because then people can find businesses that they may not have found otherwise. But Maps is not the place that I want to go looking for that. And it's just one more place for Apple to try and make a few more pennies and
Yeah.
make the customer experience worse than it is.
Which wasn't Apple's thing, right? It was Google's thing because they're an information and data company, right? They need stuff like that. Apple was always about the experience. When I first heard about this rumor, I was just hoping that it was an Apple hater rumor that, those pop up that, you hear about it and you're like, that it's just these rumors were just designed to shed a negative light on Apple. But as months and months went on, it sounded like it was more and more true. And now it sounds like, yeah, this is actually going to be a thing. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to that at all.
There's going to be ads everywhere. There's ads in Pages, there's ads in Numbers, there's ads in the Settings app. Now there's going to be
Yeah.
ads in Maps. And I don't know. Maybe our third news story, which maybe we can cover that one next then. Maybe this will or have a shift in direction, but I don't know if it'll shift anytime soon and if it'll do that. And that is the news story that yesterday Tim Cook announced that he's retiring as of September 1st. He'll
Right.
become executive chairman of the board, and John Turnus, who's long been their hardware chief, is taking over as CEO. They're going to be, sounds like kind of like co-CEOs for the next few months to get through the summer with
Yeah.
WWDC and the big announcements and stuff like that. But prior to iPhone announcement, Tim Cook will be retired and John Turnus will be the guy. And then they also promoted, which I find fascinating, and hopefully they don't lose focus on their chips, but Johnny Sarugi, who's been the mastermind behind Apple Silicon, which is
Hmm.
probably the greatest accomplishment Apple has had. I mean, yes, they make good phones and they make good iPads and good
Right.
computers, but the only reason they're as awesome as they are, especially on the iPad and the Mac side right now, is because of their
Right.
own custom chip. So that's the news announcement. Maybe John Turnos will take it in a different direction and start going back to some of the traditional Apple roots, but I don't know if I want to hold my breath.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I see Apple going into a completely different direction. Right. I think that by the time he hits his stride, maybe 5, 6 years in, because there's still a lot of stuff in the pipeline that Tim Cook started that we're going to see coming to fruition in the next few years. So, but let's say all the decisions that he makes going forward from that point, I think we're going to be seeing a completely different Apple. But only time will tell.
Our last news item, and this one frustrates me to no end because
It
it's, in
sounded
my
like it when
opinion,
I brought it up. It sounded like it kind of rubbed you the wrong way.
well, it pressed the button because at least in the US, Southwest Airlines has started limiting how many portable battery chargers you can bring on
Yeah,
board, and you already can't put them in your check luggage. So now you can
yeah,
only take on Southwest, you can only take one portable charger and it has to be under a certain number of milliamps. You can't charge that charger from the outlet ports in the seats. You can charge your
yeah,
phone from it, but it also has to be visible at all times. So it's a whole bunch of restrictions. And I understand why, right? Because people are putting these batteries and they're up in their luggage, up in the bins, and they're
yeah.
catching fire. So there really is a safety hazard. But what the EU is talking about doing is not going to solve the problem. So the EU is talking about requiring phone makers to allow batteries in phones to be
Hmm.
replaceable with common tools, not proprietary tools, not have to send them in, not have to go to a special retail shop that does this kind
Yeah,
of stuff, but to be able to do it with common tools. And I don't think it's going to solve some of these problems. They want it to last longer. My iPhone battery lasts plenty long, right? I mean, it's just fine. And if I want to get it replaced, I go to an authorized fix it place or to Apple, and it's what, $75? And then it gives me another 3 or 4 years worth of life on the battery. But what it's going to do, I actually think it's going to make the problem of things catching fire worse. And I think you said why, right? is that people are
Yeah.
going to go and they're going to buy the cheapest batteries that they can find. And
Yep.
that's what they're going to put in these phones. And then either the phone's not going to function or it's just a cheap battery and it's still going to catch fire.
Yeah. People always complain about government oversight and regulations and stuff. And I get it. I understand a lot of those arguments, but and when it comes to tech, you just can't believe the corners that companies will cut just to ship a product, right? You think about Temu and a lot of these other the Wish app and things like that. And people think they're getting the deal. Oh, this is, 10,000 milliamps for $15. Wow, this is an amazing deal. But you won't believe the corners that these companies cut to get those products. Can you imagine? Because this doesn't just apply to Apple, right? This is all phone makers. So can you imagine a second
Mhm.
rate phone manufacturer with a third rate battery manufacturer in it? It's just going to make for some terrible times for a lot of people. And, we'll see where it goes.
Apparently, they passed this law in 2023, but it goes into effect in 2027. So, I mean, I guess we'll see starting next year what phone manufacturers start to do. All right, here's the game for rumors, Jason.
Okay.
So I'm going to cover the rumor. You're going to tell me guaranteed that's going to happen. It's probably going to happen, not likely, or no way. Some form of that. So this will be a way for us to just kind of plow through these rumors and you tell me whether you think, and then we'll have this recording and then we'll know if they actually come true or not. And we'll start to measure your accuracy like the leakers. That's what we'll do. We'll see if you
Okay.
can come up to Mark Gurman leak standards.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like fun. Let's jump into it.
All right. iPad mini upgrade. Here's what they're saying about the iPad mini, that it's going to get the newer processor. Great. That it's
Hmm.
going to get OLED, not the same OLED as the iPad Pro, which is that dual panel OLED, right? That's super,
Right.
super high end, which frankly is the best screen on any Apple device. And then a bunch of other kind of minor upgrades. But the biggest thing is that the iPad mini is going to get OLED. Do you think they're going to start pushing the iPad mini more towards the Pro end?
I'm gonna say probably, but this is one of those things that's guaranteed because we know the mini is gonna get an upgrade. But like we spoke about in a previous episode, it's not as easy as people think. They're not just taking the technology and shrinking it down to a iPad mini size. They have to re-engineer this thing. So I'm gonna say that it's guaranteed to happen, but probably not this generation. So I'm gonna say, oh yeah, OLED guaranteed. Some of these other features probably.
Okay. iPhone Pro colors, light blue, cherry red, not the best red, but it's
Yeah.
almost this color. It's almost more of a maroonish color,
It is,
black
yeah.
and silver. No orange in this generation. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about those colors?
I'm gonna say light blue, black, and silver are guaranteed. Cherry red, probably. Now, it is
Okay.
a good Apple-esque color, right? It is something Apple would do. And I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. And I think you were kind of the same way, right? It's not the best red, but it is red. And I'm gonna say probably on the red. There was another color from the 17 generation. I can't remember what it was, but it turned out not to be true. So, and like with
Yeah.
anything with Apple, if they can't get it 100% right, last minute, doesn't matter how far down the production line it is, they won't go with it. They'll just cut it. So, the other three
Yep.
colors are probably guaranteed. Cherry red may or may not happen.
All right. Here's one of our favorites, Apple Watch Ultra 4. So here are the rumors, additional health sensors to improve accuracy. And it
Hmm.
almost sounded like having more than one of the same sensor. It's kind of what it
Okay.
sounded like, so that they could get more readings and better readings. That's number one.
Hmm.
That they're going to put Touch ID in the watch, design and durability enhancements, and then improve performance and battery life. So let's start at the bottom. Improve performance and battery life. Guaranteed, probably,
Guaranteed.
not likely, no way. All right.
No, that's
Guaranteed.
guaranteed.
Design and durability enhancements.
Guaranteed. We talked about different materials and things like that. So, if they go with a different material, I'm going to say that that's guaranteed it's going to be more durable.
Okay. Touch ID in the Apple Watch.
No way. Absolutely not. Pointless feature. I don't see why you would need it on the watch. I just don't.
That's my thing. I put my watch on, I unlock my iPhone, I get a
Right.
notification that says my Apple Watch is unlocked. and I move on. Why would I need Touch ID? Because I don't need it for Apple Pay. I just double press the button, and because my watch is on my wrist and it's authenticated through my iPhone, I'm good to go. So I don't see a use for Touch ID on the watch.
I don't. And it may be a stretch with me saying it, but I can almost see Face ID being more usable than Touch ID on the watch. But uh,
Then the last one, additional health sensors. We're not talking about glucose, although that's kind of the next holy grail now that they've got a blood pressure measurement in
yeah,
there, but they're talking about additional health sensors to improve accuracy. What do you think about that one?
yeah, that's probably no, not probably. I think that's guaranteed, right? And that comes with just all of the general improvements that the watch makes every year anyway, right? The Ultra 4 is supposed to be a bigger deal over the Ultra 3. Yeah, additional health sensors, it's probably guaranteed that that's happening.
Last one, AirPods. Rumor has so Apple just recently bought Israeli AI company that was
Hmm.
in doing AI related to audio. It was actually their second largest acquisition ever. So
Oh,
Beats was
okay.
massive, right? From a lot of
Yeah.
people and cost standpoint. But what their rumor is, so there's been this rumor about putting infrared cameras in AirPods, which I was like, okay, why would you need infrared cameras? And a lot of it was
Hmm.
about Siri and AI and being able to recognize what's around you. But this rumor says that with that AI for audio, they're potentially going to get silent speech improvements. So the way I understood this, and again, this is just rumor, is that those infrared cameras would be able to read somebody's lips and help translate that into speech.
Okay. Wow. Sounds very futuristic. I'm not sure if we're close enough to technology like that to be able to fit into an AirPod, right? Maybe in some smart glasses, maybe in a more streamlined version of Vision Pro. I don't see it in the AirPods, but you know, they've done a few things before that totally surprised us. So I'm gonna put this in a not likely for the next few years, but I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we got real time translation, which I thought was far, far,
Yeah,
far down the road. I
I would
mean,
have
it's
thought
not
that was
like,
far off too.
yeah, it's not quite Star Trek Universal Translator yet, but it's pretty close. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it, we know Apple's gonna make it work and they're gonna be the first to make that work, but I just see that technology better suited for other hardware and not necessarily and I could be wrong. Maybe nope, nope. How do we're a few years off. And
All right.
these things are already jam-packed with so much technology now. That would just make it bigger, right? We don't
Yep.
want bigger AirPods. We want smaller, lighter AirPods. So, yeah, we'll see.
All right. So you're going to go with unlikely on that one, at least for now.
Yeah. Not likely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for rumors. So we'll see how Jason does on that. And I'm sure we're headed in a massive rumor season because
Yeah.
they've already announced WWDC. We know we're going to be getting new operating systems. And then as soon as we get out of rumors for the operating systems, we'll start the rumor mills for the iPhones, which are already heating up. So we'll have plenty of rumors to play this game with. Jason, do you want to kind of explain why you suggested we dive into this topic right now?
Yeah, yeah. So you've heard us say Apple likes before, and we never really get a chance to explain why we call it Apple likes instead of Apple cares. But dealing with Apple Care, which is their insurance replacement a program that they use to replace devices. We had an experience late last week with my son who regularly smashes his phone, whether it be the front glass or the black glass. He does it on a regular basis. We had an experience last week and it wasn't great. Was not great at all. So it just got me to thinking maybe we should cover this topic sooner rather than later because while all of the experiences is fresh in my head. And we can also share how things used to be because
Mhm.
it used to be great, Greg, right? We used to deal with
Yeah.
AppleCare, both of us, on a regular basis with multiple devices, with our family, and with work professionally. And yeah, it just wasn't great. So I figured, hey, this is a good time. Let's talk about it. might even hear grandpa rant about it a little bit because I'm not happy with the current state.
This is one of those where grandpa might be reminiscing on the old days because they were so much better, right? So,
Yeah,
well,
yeah. And in this case, it was actually better.
yeah. So let me just walk through. I'll do this really, really fast, and then we'll dive into some of these stories and what we're seeing. So Apple Care. So every device you buy from Apple comes with a warranty. Usually it's 1 year,
Yeah,
but then
one
you
year.
can add on to that. Now that 1 year warranty only covers manufacturing defects. So
Right.
accidental damage or you doing something stupid with the phone, like leaving it out in the sun for 6 hours or whatever, it's just not going to be covered by their basic warranty. But
Yeah,
you can buy AppleCare, which is the play on AppleLikes, right? So it's AppleCare is what it's called, or AppleCare Plus, or AppleCare One, which is their newest thing. But
yeah,
we said, does Apple really care? Maybe they just like. So you'd have to
yeah,
go back to our Gadgets for Families episode to dive into that. But what you can do is you can buy an extended warranty, is essentially what it is. Now, I know you think extended warranty, and I think of Homer Simpson. There's an episode where he had the crayon up his nose and they took it out, and all of a sudden he was super smart. And as they were putting it back in, because he didn't want to be the smart guy anymore, he wanted to go back to being Homer. One of the levels they get to tell if the crayon was far enough up in his nose was extended warranty. Woohoo! Right.
yeah.
So, but in this case, and I think we'll talk about, even though the experience isn't great, we still have it because
Yes.
this is a way for you to deal with these devices are critical to our lives, right? I mean, I can't think of going without my phone for a while or
Yeah,
my computer, which is my livelihood. So it's a way to get that, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can get single device coverage and you can pay by month. You can also pay for like 2 years at a time. That used to be sort of the default. 1 year or 2 years of
yeah,
AppleCare Plus was the default. They've gone away from that, like everything, and have gone to subscriptions. Single device coverage,
yeah.
I'll just do the iPhones. For the 17E, it's $9.99 a month, or you pay $100 annually. For the 17 or 16, it's $11.99 or $120 annually. 16
Hmm.
plus still on here, 13 or 130. And then the iPhone Air 17 Pro, 17 Pro Max, those are 14 or $140 for a year, right? So, I mean, honestly, that seems a little pricey, but I have always just bought the annual plans when I bought the phone, and I just assumed it was
Right,
part of the cost of buying the phone, and then I didn't worry about it again because I didn't want the monthly payments.
right.
But now they've come out with AppleCare One, so it's multi-device coverage. So $19.99 a month for up to 3 devices, and then $5.99 a month for each additional device after that. So yeah,
Yeah,
you could start to add up if you want to add devices on, but it's still cheaper than buying these all individually because you would end up paying 14 bucks for your iPhone, probably another 15 bucks for your Mac, another 15 bucks for your iPad. So you're talking about $45 a month. Instead, you're just paying 19.99.
yeah, yeah. Here's the thing that's great about AppleCare One too. At least at the time when I bought the phone, you can add current devices that you already have, right? It doesn't
Right.
have to be every new device that you buy. When I bought my phone, the plan was to add my watch, which I already had, and my iPad, which I didn't have coverage on, or the coverage had already, uh, expired for that year. So I think that that's great about the AppleCare One is being able to add old devices. They don't hold you to nope. This only applies to your new device and everything that you buy in the future, not anything that you already own.
Right.
Now, I'm sure there's
Right.
limitations on, you can't add your 2015 MacBook Air or something like that, but I think that that's a good thing. One of those things that Apple
Yeah.
shows that they still kind of like you a little bit.
Yeah. 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 I think if there are restrictions, if it is an older device, I think they just have to run a diagnostic. What they want to make
Yeah,
sure is that it's in good working order, that there's not going to immediately be a claim
right.
against the warranty. So when I did mine, and this will lead into I'll just do the coverage I currently have. When I bought my 2 new phones, that's right after Apple One had come out. So I put both phones on that, and then I actually was able to cancel the annual plan that I had on my Mac, get refunded for the prorated amounts, and then
Right.
add it as my third device. So I've got my video phone, my primary phone, and my Mac are all on AppleCare One. So you can cancel old ones and get prorated refunds on them, and they kind of do that automatically, which is great, and then add these other devices. And so I'm going to have some decisions to make. Right now, I still have coverage. I have individual coverage on my Apple Watch, my AirPods, not the
Hmm.
Max, but my AirPods Pro 3s, and both of my iPads. The coverage for my big iPad is actually expiring in June. So I'll probably just add it for $6 a month on to Apple Care One.
To your Apple One. Yep.
So, and I used to be hit and miss on purchasing, but when I was in Houston, I was hit and miss because I could get to a store. But the
Right.
reason I purchase now is I'm nowhere near a store, and express replacement, which comes with Apple Care Plus, which is the ability for you to pay a little bit higher repair fee. But if it's your phone, they ship you the new phone, you swap it over, then you ship the old phone back. So basically, you're getting it's a refurb. It's not a brand new usually. It's a
Yeah.
refurb phone, but their refurbs are fine. And then it comes with all the warranty and it just keeps going. But I don't have to be without my phone while it sits in a shop for however long to get stuff done. Or I don't have to drive 2 hours to a store to have them do a glass replacement, which I can talk about that other. So I'm more inclined to buy it today, even though the experience, as we've talked about, isn't as great, and we'll talk about that. I don't have coverage on my HomePods or my Apple TVs, but pretty much everything else I get coverage on. So, Jay, what about you? Because you were even more hit and miss on whether you bought coverage or not. So, do you have
I
coverage on
was.
everything nowadays?
My son, he busts his up annually. My wife, she's pretty rough on her phone, but she usually has a case on it. Maybe not as rugged as it should be, but her damage is usually cosmetic. Maybe after a year or so, she may have a little chip on the side of the screen or whatever. So we make sure we keep them on the phones. Me, never dropped the phone enough to damage it, but I just like to have that peace of mind, right? All of my devices, I usually hand them down in pretty good or almost near mint condition, except for, maybe some scratches or whatever from the cases or the skins that I put on it. But definitely all of the phones need it. And when we get to some of the stories, I had to talk my son down off of a ledge last week because he just the whole situation was just so frustrating, and he's like, "Why am I paying?" And he pays me. He pays his 13, his $14 a month um, for his Apple Care, but he's like, "Why do I need to pay it if I have to deal with this hassle and stuff?" And I had to, really break it down. Like, I understand it is frustrating, son, but these are the reasons why you need to keep this. And
Right.
afterwards, he kind of calmed down and was like, okay, I'll continue to send my $14 a month to you. But no, none of the Apple TVs, which I have three, only one came from Apple. So only one was eligible for Apple Care anyway. And I just didn't feel that I needed it. Although the battery in the remote swelled up and kind of separated the case. A long story on that. But my iPad, I had it only because this was the most expensive iPad that I've ever purchased. And then at the end of that, I let it expire and hadn't looked back, hadn't had any issues, any problems with it. So yeah, the phones are a must. My watch, again, when we talk about our experiences, I had it for the whole life of the my Apple Watch Ultra, and went to do a service repair, and that was a total
Yep.
nightmare, a total hassle experience that made me regret having it, purchasing it, and I purchased it right out. I didn't do the monthly thing. Yeah, yeah, it was just a frustrating experience. So, which I no longer have a watch, so I no longer have Apple Care on that. So, but yeah, just the watches for now. I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just my phones for now, not the watch.
Yeah. So you're still hit or miss. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about these stories here in a second. Just a little background in case you didn't listen to our kind of our origins episode. Jason and I dealt with hundreds, if not thousands,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
devices and getting them repaired or finding the best way to repair them. And at the corporate level, most of the time we didn't buy extended warranties. So we were dealing directly with Apple under regular warranties to get stuff taken care of. And in the past, it was easy to talk to somebody. You could get
Yeah.
an appointment. Or you could just walk into the Genius Bar and yeah, you might have to wait a little bit, but you could
Yeah,
eventually get help and get something taken care of. And I know now from an appointment standpoint, when I lived in northern Utah, to get into the Apple store that I was at, I mean, sometimes it was days out before I could get an appointment to get
I
in
can
and get
see that.
something fixed. And
Yeah,
part of that's their own doing because they sell so many devices, right? So some of
yeah,
this is not Apple not wanting to do stuff, but just the fact that you can't handle the volume. So you can't put 100 geniuses in a Apple store to be able to take every appointment that needs to come in. There's physically not room for that. And the equipment and having all the spare parts and all that kind of stuff is just not practical. So some of it has to do with just the sheer volume. But I think you put this note in here,
yeah,
just doesn't it seems like there's friction and they just don't make it easy to make it convenient for you to get it done.
yeah, yeah. You really have to dig in there to be able to set an appointment. Otherwise, and I'm looking at it from the wrong perspective, right? Maybe it is easier because most people, when they need help, they want the next appointment. They want to get in right away. So they make that part easier. It's kind of a hassle to kind of dig in there to set an appointment for the next day at 5:30. Just not as simple, not as straightforward as it used to be.
Yeah. Um, even like the express replacement used to be a slam dunk. It used to be
Yeah,
super easy. This last one for me wasn't horrible, but a couple of times before that, I basically had to argue to get express replacement, even though
yeah,
that's what I needed to do. But it was almost like I had to fight with the technician to get it done. And I don't know who put this note in our stuff, but the techs actually cared. And it wasn't just the techs
yeah,
that were doing the work, it was also the customer service folks that wanted to exceed your expectations. They wanted to find the right solution for you. And now
yeah.
we've gone back to, I think we talked, I can't remember what we were talking about, but we were talking about how most people just want to follow a script. And that's what it feels like Apple has gone to when it wasn't always that way. It feels like at some point they were more empowered to do the right thing for the customer. And I have a couple of stories for that. But now it's more of, no, I got to follow this script. And if it's not by this script, then I'm not going to do it. And I hate to be that guy, but as much as I've run customer service organizations and technical support groups and stuff like that, almost anytime I call in for help on something, the first thing I want to say is, can you just put me through to a manager now? Because that's probably where we're going to end
Right.
up. And that's not
Yeah,
fair to the person on the other end of the phone,
yeah.
but it almost is what it feels like. And I didn't think Apple would go there, but they kind of have.
Yeah, yeah, and you said the reason why. Back when we were dealing with it, they were building popularity. A lot of people loved it, and there were a few million of devices out there that they had to support. Now here we are years later, and there are hundreds of millions of devices out there for multiple generations. And the main thing that I used to say back, and you heard me say this a million times, complaining about the outsourcing of jobs and stuff. Like you can't teach passion, right? You can teach people to follow a script, but you can't teach passion. You can't teach people to love these devices like we do, right? And that's what it seems that we're running into with these Apple guys, right? And no disrespect, they're all wonderful folks. A lot of them are. But back then, they were just as passionate about the devices as we were. You know what I mean? They loved it. All the way down from the guy that was greeting you at the door till you get to an actual genius in the back. All of those guys loved everything about those devices. Now it seems like people are just like, you know, I need a job. They're hiring. I hate to say it, but it seems like they got a lot of those folks that just they're there for the job.
Yeah.
They're staring at their little iPad. They're not even making contact with you. They're not even looking at you. They're just okay. Go and stand by the MacBook. The iMacs over there, or they punch you in. Okay, I have you set for this. Go and sit in that seat over there in the corner. Somebody will be with you. You go and sit there 15 minutes, somebody comes up and say, "Hey, are you here for an iPhone or are you here for whatever?" And
Yeah.
they just kind of herd you through the whole store process. And again, this is Grandpa ranting, just not how Apple used to be, right? You used to walk in the door and you would walk out with some kind of solution. It may not have been the best solution. It may not have been the best solution to your problem. You may not be happy with it, but you didn't walk out with a come back next week. You didn't
Right.
walk out with, okay, we'll leave your phone here and we'll call you in 2 or 3 days when we get it done. That was never the issue. And again, I understand hundreds of millions of phones out there. You can't make everybody happy, but wow, it's really a hassle now. And it's not as pleasant of an experience as it used to be going into the store. And you and I spent hours and hours and hours at the store.
I think in store, you get some experiences in store that are still good. Right?
Yeah,
Like, I think about
you
the
do.
guy that walked me through my Vision Pro demo. That was good. But on the phone or on chat, it's actually gotten worse. I mean, I used to be able
Hmm.
to use text messaging with them any time of day and get a good experience. Now I absolutely refuse to even reach out to them unless it's during core business hours because I know I'm going to get the B team, which is really the D team because they don't have
Yeah.
an A team on the other end anymore. And I understand its scope, its scale, its volume, all those kinds of things. But to give you all a good idea, this is not just two grandpas ranting about this, even though we're ranting. But let me share I've had my best Apple support experience. I've had a couple of them that really just stand out in my mind. And I've used express replacement on phones, iPads, and a lot on AirPods
Hmm.
because those things just one goes out and I need them replaced. And so I've used that and had some really good experiences there, but two experiences that stand out for me. When I lived in Texas, I was at the pool and I got out of the pool and I thought my hair was completely dry and my phone rings. So I pick it up and answer it. Well, it just so happened that my hair lined up perfectly with the headphone jack
I remember
and
that. Yeah.
water dripped down in it. And immediately it stopped working, right? It
Yeah.
was immediately that happened, and so I'm like, "Oh, great." So I go home, I change clothes, and I drive about 15 minutes to the Apple Store. No appointment, no nothing, right? I get in the Apple Store at the Woodlands, and I walk into the store. They get me back to somebody, and I told them exactly what happened. I just flat out told them, "Yep, I
Hmm.
know I dripped water in it. It had to have been just perfect." And they said, "Oh yeah, we can see the little thing in here that says there's water damage." I'm like, "Okay, well, let me see what we can do." They go in the back, and a few minutes later, they walk out with another phone.
Yeah.
That was not covered. I did not have AppleCare on that phone. I didn't have these extended warranties that cover damage. They just came out with another phone. It might have been brand new. It might have been a refurb at that point. It
Yeah.
didn't matter. They were like, "Do you want us to transfer your stuff over? Do you want to do it yourself?" And I'm like, "Really? What do I owe you?" And they're like, "No, no, no. Don't worry about it." So that
Yeah.
was just this phenomenal. And this was early in iPhone days because it was like the 3G or the 4 or something like that. Right. So,
Right. Before they started kind of water
mm,
resistant, kind of waterproofing these
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my number one experience, and that was without even having extra Apple Care. The other one, Dustin was out here visiting and he needed to go back to Texas and he had some major issues with his phone and it was all his own fault. It was accidental
Hmm.
damage and stuff like that. And we had Apple Care Plus on it. So we go into the Apple store on the way to the airport, mind you. So he's got to be to the airport. We show up at the Apple store and we're like, "Hey, this is the problem with the phone. We want to upgrade anyway. How do we do this?" And they said, "Oh, well, you've got Apple Care Plus. So just pay the 99 bucks for the express replacement
Yeah.
and we'll just trade it in." Basically, it was trade in value less 99 bucks to do the replacement. And Dustin walked out of there in 45 minutes with his new phone, all of his stuff on it, at least enough that he could start using it at the airport.
Right. Right.
And they
Number
didn't need to do
transferred
that,
over and stuff like that. Yeah.
right? I mean, they didn't need to do any of that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of experiences that I was used to having with Apple. And that second one, the first one was when I was working and we probably had a business notation on our account that said, "Hey, they're with Stewart. They're a business.
Yeah.
They have a lot of devices." But the second time I wasn't. So it was great. Those are the kind of experiences that I'm used to having. And Jay, I know you've had a bunch of those as well, where they were super positive.
Yeah, yeah, and I can say I know you and I both. We spend a lot more time in the Apple Store than most people, right? Than the average person. Average person, you'll buy your device. If there's a problem, you'll go back in a few months. If not, they'll see you next year whenever there's an upgrade. Not you and I. We were there in there every week to I think about like you remember that old show Cheers when Norm would walk in and the bar would go, Norm. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of the same with us. Like we would go in and they'd be like, hey, I'll be with you in a second. So I don't want you guys to think this is that. Like I'm just ranting I'm upset because I wanted special treatment or we want to be treated a special way. I don't want special treatment. I just want to get what we pay for, which is you walk in, you pay your Apple Care, you pay for the year like we used to, or the 2 years, and something happens with the phone or the watch. I just want a replacement right then. Right. That's really all I'm asking for. It doesn't have to be in style. I don't have to be greeted or babysat the whole time I'm there. But yeah, some of the great experiences I had, I remember taking a, a, a stack of phones, and it was a combination of different issues. Some were iCloud locked. I had maybe three or four that were iCloud locked. Maybe two or three were damaged. Two or three were having some other speaker issue. And just taking that stack of phones and just walking in, carrying them like a football, and sitting down at the table. And whether it was one or two texts that come over, I'll handle this, I'll handle these, I'll handle because the iCloud locks was a whole different experience. That's I'm not going to go into the details with that, but it was a process to get those unlocked. But going and being back off at my desk by lunchtime is just something that would be impossible now. It'll be impossible. If you go in with five or six phones, I guarantee you that one, you probably won't leave with all of those devices. Two, the the iCloud lock process, I just can't imagine how long and convoluted the thing is probably now. You probably have to leave the device for one certain specialist that only handle those and he's on vacation this week or something like that. I just know it'll be a headache. But man, those were some of my best experiences. And then on the personal side, just taking the phone in with just a smashed screen. Now, this was before they were replacing phones, replacing broken glass front and back in store, right? They had no choice but to either send it off or just swap the phone out then. And yeah, I can remember with one of my personal phones, like I want to say maybe 15 minutes. I was in on time for my appointment. I was in and walking out with a replacement phone, a refurbished phone, not a brand new phone, in 15 or 20 minutes. And even with your son, 45 minutes, that still was a good turnaround on the way to the airport, made his flight on time. There's just something you can't expect now. And it's a bummer. And that's what brought this whole episode up was just the experience now is just not as pleasant as it used to be.
So, Jay, tell me, because you haven't shared the story with me, what happened? I know you have in the notes here. We probably don't have time to go through all of them. So maybe we should just
Yeah.
hit on our last experience because both of us struggled a little bit with this last one. So,
Yeah.
what happened with this last experience that brought this up?
Yeah. So my son went, and again, he smashes his phone annually. It's like a hobby of his. And he has my old 16 Pro Max. So again, I handed it to him in flawless condition in September. And this is the third replacement on it. So that'll give you an idea. But it was the back glass this time and a chip on the front glass, but livable. The back glass was smashed. And he tells his mom, Mom, can you take me to the Apple store? I want to get a replacement. So she was like, well, we don't have time today. Set the appointment for tomorrow, which is a Monday. Set it for tomorrow after you come from baseball practice. He's like, okay, cool. We went through the app. He comes to me, he's, Dad, I can't find to set the appointment. It only says today, and mom says she can't take me today. Well, I'm like, well, you can't go today. So let's go to the app. So we went through, and like I said, it took some digging, but we were able to set the appointment for 5 o'clock the next day. Now, the appointments are available for 5 o'clock. I don't know that Apple can't determine what problems you bring to them, but if 5 o'clock is an option, you should be able to have those solutions at 5 o'clock. They get there, and of course, the guy says, well, the mall closes at such and such time. We can't do anything for you today, which
Oh,
is unheard of for Apple, right? It just sounded a little absurd to me.
and you have Apple Care Plus on this, right?
Yes, yes, we have the Apple Care Plus. It's 5 o'clock. We can't do anything for you today, but your option is you can leave the phone and we'll text you sometime tomorrow when your phone is done. And this was just a back glass replacement, right? It's going to replace, I believe, the back and the front. So it was a little more work than just replacing one side. They had to replace both sides. Okay, I think my frustration with Apple also accompanied my frustration with the situation with my wife and my
Mm.
son because she comes in and he's like, why does he have to pay $14 a month for and it's the 13 plus the tax and all of that. I just tell him just to send me the $14. Why does he have to pay This is the mind of a 15-year-old, which is the mind of a 25-year-old, which is the mind of a 45-year-old. It doesn't change. Why do I have to pay my money for them to tell me I'm not going to fix your problem? We're going to fix the problem whenever we get around to it. So he's frustrated. And she comes in and she's frustrated. He wants to cancel his AppleCare. He doesn't feel like, I have to deal with the attitude. I have to deal with why do I have to leave without my phone? Or we're talking teenager without his phone for 24 hours is a lifetime. So she's mad. In turn, that makes me mad. So I called him to the room. I can't remember what I was working on something on the iPad, and he comes in and he does the whole teenager thing where he's leaning against the door and his head is cocked to the side. And okay, Dad, what do you want to lecture me about now? And I'm like, what's going on? I don't understand. What it's just a phone. They always just replace the phone. Like, why can't they just give me a new phone and all that? I'm like, okay, well, let me explain this to you. To save costs and part of their green initiative and blah blah blah. They don't feel like just replacing phones willy-nilly like that. Now they make a conscious effort to try to replace just the glass or replace what's wrong with the phone instead of just giving you a new phone and all of that. So I explained the process to him and I'm like, hey, you may not think that it's, and I'm defending Apple and I'm frustrated with them, but I'm defending them at this point. You may think that $14 a month is a lot from a 15-year-old. It's a lot. And then you don't get the results you want. But let me explain to you the alternative. The alternative is you smash the glass, which you've already done 3 times since I've given you this phone. The alternative is you live with the smashed phone or you pay, you know, what is it, $600 or whatever for a brand new
Mhm.
phone. Maybe now, what I'm telling him, and he's in his teenager mode. He's already frustrated. And I'm like, I'm no mathematizer. I'm not a mathematician here, but is 15 bucks better than 600 bucks? I don't know. Maybe you can explain it to me. I know you guys, when y'all learn math now, is different. You have to do it in blocks and all of that. They teach y'all a different way. But I think at the end of the day, you would rather pay the 14 bucks instead of the $600. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we talked, we argued a little bit, and I, finally told him, hey, just cancel it. Just cancel it. Now, he can't cancel it because he's grandfathered in. There was no way to transfer it. So it comes out of my account. I pay for it and he reimbursed me. Usually about 2 weeks after it's due. Let me add that. But I'm like, fine. Stop paying it. Stop paying it. And then when you smash your phone in 3 weeks, see what happens then. And this was gonna be one of those hard way lessons that he had to learn. The next day, they text my wife. They said the phone was ready. She waited for him to come from school. She went and picked up the phone. He came back in and he was all smiles again. And he gave his mom a big hug and thank you, mama. I'm so sorry. I apologize for giving you my attitude and all of that. And she's in mommy mode and she's like, no, no, no. Go ahead, but he apologized and, for all the frustration and stuff. But, it goes back to Apple. Like, why set 5 o'clock appointments if you don't have 5 o'clock solutions? You could have cut it off at 2:30 and said, okay, all phone replacements or phone repairs or whatever, they're done by 2:30. So if you're repairing your phone, set an appointment for the next day before 2:30. You know what I mean? Don't have an
Yeah.
appointment available. Also, have those solutions available. What are the chances that your last, what they do one every 30 minutes? Well, so what are the chances of these last 4 appointments or last 5 appointments are going to be glass replacements or phone replacements? Be prepared for that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't
Let
know.
me let me ask you let me ask you a couple of things. So, when you
Mm.
set the appointment, though, you tell them what the problem is. I
Exactly.
mean, you
You have
tell
to
them that it's
choose what the
broken
issue
glass, and
is. Yep.
and you set this appointment the day before. Even if they weren't gonna be able to accommodate it, they could have come back and told you via email or text or whatever and said, "You know what? I see that you wanna do a glass replacement. We actually wouldn't be able to
Yep.
accommodate that in the evening. Here are your other options," so you didn't have to go into the store. That would have been a better way to do it.
Yep. Because I mentioned to him the express replacement too, the 99 bucks, and he wasn't having that. He didn't have the 99
Yeah.
bucks to pay for it.
Yeah, so for everybody that doesn't know, not only do Jay and I do a lot of tech support, but we're also customer service. First and foremost, we're customer service
Right.
people. We get really annoyed about this stuff. So that was going to be my second question. How much did they cost you to replace the glass?
So it was the 30 bucks. I
Okay.
actually, yeah, it was the 30 bucks. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what it is, right? You could have done, if you had known that you were going to go through that, you could have done express replacement, because
Yeah.
obviously he was living with the phone, right? I mean,
Yeah.
another 2 days with the phone wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Could have paid the $99, had the express replacement come, and never be without the phone, which is the
Yeah.
reason I do this thing. Yes, it would have been saved me $60, but I would have had to have driven the closest store for me. And you know how much I love to go to Vegas is in Vegas. And so it's just like, no, because it's a 2 hour drive to the closest Apple store for me. That's the thing, is we used to make decisions based on the expectation that things were going to go well. And
Yeah.
now it's almost like we have to make decisions based on the expectation that things are not going to go well, which for me is, I'm going to do express replacement every time. Think about it this way, and I know you wouldn't have been able to explain this to a teenager because it just won't go through their brains.
Yeah.
Plus, he probably figures he's going to get a new phone in 3 months when you upgrade anyway. But the thing is, it's a $60 difference, right? But
Yeah.
for that $60, I'm not without my phone. I get a battery that's probably better than the battery I had in the device.
Hmm.
Because if it's refurb, they're putting new stuff, they're making sure it's good to go. It's been rechecked, checked, and rechecked. It's almost like going to the doctor and you get the med student and you're like, cool. I get the med student, then I get the supervising doctor, then I get the attending physician are all going to look over me because
Yeah.
they don't want the med student to screw up, right? And so with a refurb iPhone, for me, it's not only the convenience, but also the fact that I'm getting a as close to brand new phone as I can get.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
that's what I went through just from my last experience. So we don't run super long here, but I dropped I go without a case and I dropped my phone and it was in the case and it still shattered the bottom portion of the screen and then started to spider up the whole way. This was just a few weeks ago. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, great. So I get online, I start to chat with the technician because I prefer to do chat. We had to go back and forth about how much it costs and what the options were. I didn't get as much pushback as the last time I did on doing an express replacement. So I just
Hmm.
flat out said, I don't have an Apple store close. I want to do express replacement. So I just told them that up front. Then we had to go back and forth about the price. That was fine. A couple days later, the phone shows up. I go in and do it. Now, here's where it got a little weird. So the instructions on the phone said that you have to return it within 10 days of when the other phone shipped, when the first phone shipped to you. And they do ship
Really?
overnight, right?
Not
So it
when
was
it's
the next
delivered.
day. Right. But then they ship them back ground. So they're not express. They're just like, 3 to 5
Yeah.
days, whatever it is, FedEx. And so, but those instructions said you got to ship it back. So I got it on like a Friday. I usually like to keep it for 5 or 6 days just to make sure I've logged into everything. I don't have a
Hmm.
password that I'm missing, any of those kinds of things. But when I saw that on Monday, I thought, oh, great, I'm going to hurry and go ship it because I don't want, because they've got a hold on your credit card, right? They've got a hold for
Yeah.
$1,300 for the price of a new phone. So I don't want that to be a problem. So I go back and I ship it using their label, using their box, all of that kind of stuff. So the first part was good. The back part was bad. The last few times it's been the front part that's been hard and the back part was easy because it just kind of worked like clockwork. I ship the device back. They get it. The next day they say they got it. They're inspecting it. Same day I get another notification that says, yep, you're good to go. We're done. We're closed out. Well, they get the device on a Monday or whatever it was. So on the day that they were supposed to get it.
Hmm.
And then it just sits there. I don't get anything. I don't get anything saying we got it. I don't get anything saying we were expecting it. And then the next thing I get is another email that says, hey, you still have not returned your device to us. Remember, if you don't do it, but now they gave me a date that was like another 10 days out. So I had like 20 days
Okay.
of leeway here, which was not the original instruction. So inconsistency there. They're
Right.
like, you've not returned your device. If you don't, that's going to be a full charge. And I'm sitting here and going, wait a minute. I sent you the device. I don't have the device. You're going to charge me and say, no, you didn't send us the device. And you're going to think I have two iPhones when I don't. I sent it back and I've got the FedEx tracking number that says it was delivered and who signed for it. So I've got all of that stuff. So I'm like, okay. So I reach out via text and they're like, oh, yeah, we don't see that you returned it. I'm like, no, here's the FedEx.
Mm.
So I go back and forth for like 20 minutes with the entry level tech rep. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to escalate this. Can you send me screenshots of the FedEx and the email that you got saying you hadn't returned it yet? I'm like, you guys can see all that kind of stuff. So it was
Yeah,
a
you
hassle.
sent me the information.
Right.
What do you mean
Right.
you don't have it?
So they're like, okay. And they're like, well, we're going to escalate this and somebody will be in touch with you from our escalation team. And so I get the new case number via email and it says somebody will be in touch in X number of business days or whatever it was. Right.
Right,
So those days go by. Meanwhile, it's still sitting wherever it's sitting. The authorization goes away because the bank will only let you leave those on for 10 days. Authorization goes away and I don't hear back from them. So I reach out again and they said, oh, yeah, it's with our escalation team, but we'll see if we can get the authorization released. I'm like, well, that's not the point. I don't want it to turn into a charge that then I have to get refunded. They're like, oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, we understand. We'll escalate it. So the next day I get an email that says, oh, somebody from our escalation team is going to reach out to you in 2 days between this time and this time. And I thought they were going to call me. And so I scheduled my day around all that kind of stuff. Well, right before the hour hits, I'm looking and going, oh, they said they were going to email me. So I could have been out doing whatever and just saw the email. So I get an email from them that says, hey, we're still looking into this. I'm following it closely. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. That was my follow up from them. But then later
Well,
that
at
day,
least
I
you
get
got
a
a follow-up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Later that day, I get a notification that says, oh, we've received your device.
Okay, good, good.
And then nothing after that until I go in and look at the actual case number and it says it's closed out and done. So my guess, this is my guess. This is just Grandpa Greg speculating. My guess is they couldn't find it,
Mhm.
but because I had tracking, that they just had to say, well, we're just going to have to
Yeah,
we're just going to have to assume that it was in the box and that it was good to go and we're just going to close out this case. So that just never would have happened under older Apple customer service and support stuff. And I do understand it's probably a volume issue, right? It's just how many of these
yeah,
things are coming in. So that was my last experience. I mean, the good thing is it ended up well, but I could have ended up in a scenario where I spent another $1,300 and did not have a second phone and had
yeah,
to figure out how to do that, which longer term probably would have gotten resolved because they would have been able to see that I didn't activate the IMEI and all that kind of fun stuff, right?
yeah,
But it's just the hassle and that extra friction. It's almost like doing certain things on my Mac versus doing certain things on my iPad. It's not that it can't get done and still come to a good solution, but there's just way more friction
yeah,
in it. And it just shouldn't have to be that way. And I'm with your son. I'm paying good money every single month
yeah,
to make sure that I can do this. And I paid the $100 on top of it to make sure that this was a good experience. And it's just more of a struggle than it used to be. So,
yeah, yeah. Spending the next 2 weeks just trying to get a refund for them to investigate to even give you a refund, yeah, it would have been another 2 weeks, dealing with that. So I'm with you. It
and
would
a
have got
nightmare.
resolved eventually, but just a hassle. So, and
Yep.
I know you said we didn't want to go too long, but let me just say, so I had another experience with my phone. It was a smashed glass, but this time they didn't have the phone and the glass in stock. I had to wait an entire week, and that was for my 14 Pro Max. I had to wait an entire week for them to get a shipment of screens in so they can even replace it. Now, I kept my phone. They didn't keep the phone for the entire week, but they text me the next week or they emailed me and said, "Hey, your screen is in." But I wanted to mention this one real quick. What happens when it's not a phone, right? They repair phones in store. They can replace your glass in store. You can do the express replacement, on the phone and get that turnaround pretty quick. But what if it's not one of those devices? And that was the case with my Apple Watch. Took
Yeah.
it in. We knew what the problem was. It was the speaker. Remember, I would speak into the speaker and you couldn't hear anything. There was something in the speaker that was causing it to not work. Knew exactly what the problem was. Went to the store, had my Apple Care Plus on it. The lady says, "Okay, go ahead and take your watch off. We got to ship it, and it's gonna be." I'm like, "Wait, ship it where? Just give me a new watch. This one's busted. The microphone's busted. It's not working." Yeah, but we can't test that in store. They have to test it, so we have to ship it off. And Greg, you got reported that next week, and I said, "This is my fear. I know exactly what's wrong with the watch. If it was something that I could fix or clean or stick a needle down in there to clean it out or whatever, I would have done that. My fear is that they're going to ship the watch 3 to 5 days to ship it. They have to wait for it to be processed or their intake process. They're going to test it. And then they're going to turn around and say, okay, we're going to send you a new watch. What did we say later that day after we recorded? Because you get the updates, you see the process of
Yep.
the phone. What did it say? They received your phone. We received your watch. Okay, your watch is going to be looked at. We're going to, go through the process. 6 minutes after receiving that, they say, okay, yeah, the microphone's messed up. We're going to send you a new watch. And I'm like, that's exactly what I said. Why we couldn't do this in the store 2 weeks ago or a week ago? Just frustrating. Again, I'm not going to rant. We're not going to go too far into it, but yeah,
In all
yeah,
three of yours, so the last thing we wanted to cover is what we change. In all three of your last experiences, old Apple would have just given you another device right there. They would
yep,
have given your son a new phone or a
yep,
refurb because they would have had them in stock. They would have given you another one since they couldn't meet your expectations by getting the screen fixed. The old Apple did not want you walking around with a busted up screen
yep,
on your phone, right? And the
yep.
watch would have been the same way. So the old school Apple would have replaced those right then and there. I have
Yep.
no doubt that that's what they've done. And so I think that's the number one thing is maybe you don't have to go quite that far, but we swung the pendulum too far to following process and
Mhm.
maximizing margins that the experience is suffering. Same thing with ads and Apple Maps, right? It's that same concept that it's all about the numbers or the bottom line or whatever the case may be. And
Yeah.
we're not allowing folks to do the right thing to surprise and delight, to provide that. The Apple experience, you know how much I love that book that was all about fundamental Apple customer experience and how much I use that in all of our trainings. They just don't do that anymore. I don't know how they get there. And I'm not saying they have to go clear to that because obviously with the volume that
Yeah.
they do, they can't, but there's got to be a happy medium. So that would be my number one thing is figure out and start training people or at least empowering somebody at a level in a store or the organization to say, this is when I can make an exception and to provide those better experiences. So that's my number one thing. That one's super hard to do. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if they'll be able
Yeah.
to. Until they do it, I'm just going to continue to operate under the fact that I need the warranty because it's not going to go great with the warranty. If I don't have the warranty, it's going to be awful. Right. So
Yeah.
that's my approach. And that's not the way it used to be. I used to not buy the warranty because I figured most of the time they were going to accommodate me even without the warranty. And I understand why they can't do that now. But now it's
Mhm.
even with the warranty, I don't know how it's going to go. So I can't imagine not having the warranty on the stuff that's important to me because I wouldn't want to deal with it without it. So that's my number one. My number two, I think, is a little bit easier. Maybe they'll announce this at WWDC since last year was the first year they did AppleCare 1. I think they need to make it a family plan, right? I would stick
Yeah.
all of the devices for myself, my wife, and my two boys are still on my Apple account stuff. I would put all of our devices, if I had to pay $50 a month to cover all of that stuff, I would do it right? Because then I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about it. Then when I get a call from Dustin, who's in Houston, and he's like, I just shattered my iPhone, he doesn't call me anymore. I just see the charges when he goes into the store and gets stuff fixed now. He's not in Houston, actually. He's up in Dallas now. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's the other thing that I would like them to do. But even doing that, it's not going to be as good of an experience if they don't address the fundamental customer experience issues that they're having. And I am concerned. I hope John Turnus starts to go back and focus on pure Apple experience as a whole. He's a hardware guy rather than
Mhm.
operations guy, which was what Tim Cook's background was, right? Get the supply chain going,
Yeah.
maximize the profits, all those kinds of things. I'm hoping that John Turnus, being a hardware guy, will be more focused on no, these devices need to delight, right? Not just and the overall experience. So it's about the ads, it's about the customer support, it's about how you order a device, it's about, Steve
Yeah.
Jobs was obsessed about making sure that the battery in the phones were charged so that when you turned it on, it turned
Yep.
on
When you
and you
got it
could
out of
start
the
using the
box.
phone, right? You didn't
Yeah.
have to charge it because that's the last thing you want to do. So I just think they need to go back to some of that kind of stuff and then just make it easier for us to use this stuff. So, what about you?
Yeah.
What changes would you have them make?
So quick before we move on from your last point. I think they did the numbers on that. And I think that the way Apple is, right? We talk about the bottom line. I think that they would lose too much money, right? Because if I take my family, for example, I pay $15, my son pays $15, and I'm rounding the numbers up. It's not that exactly. And my wife pays about $10 in for her older phone. So, that's $40. If they were to allow me to put all three of our devices on Apple One, that's cutting that in half, right? I'll be paying $20 a month for all three of our phones versus the $40 that we're already paying now. So if we can go back to our rumor roundup section, that's probably not likely to happen. I wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to. But remember, Apple, they like us. They don't really care about us. I don't really see them cutting my bill in half for the sake of a customer experience for me. They would much rather us all three pay separate to a tune of 40 bucks a month versus just me paying $20 for all three of our phones. But
Yeah.
again, I'm with you on that. That is something that I want. But I wanted to say I wanted to go back to getting the customer a solution, right? It may not be the best solution. And even with my son, one can argue that, yeah, him having to wait a day, 24 hours without his phone is not the best solution, but it is a solution. No, I want to see, like you said, somebody in the store empowered to say, hey, we can't repair the phone. We're only open for an hour, so we can't repair this kid's phone. Let's just go ahead and swap it out for him. Right. The last three
Yeah.
appointments of the day, we don't want to do any glass replacements on the phone. Let's just go ahead and swap them out. Somebody empowered to say, we want to give the best solution, for the customers that come in. Another thing I would change again, you can't make people love the devices that they do. You can't make them love the job that they have. But I do want to see a bit more of that. Now, that is something that they can change.
Hmm.
Is the person that you're speaking with loving the devices or loving the solution, right? Not necessarily somebody that loves helping somebody, not just somebody that's going to go and check all of these boxes. Okay, I've done everything, my three boxes, send you up to the next level and let them check their three boxes, then kick you on to another department if if those three boxes don't get checked. I think having people in that actually are passionate about what they do goes a long way when it comes to customer service and stuff. So that's the number one thing I would fix. And also, I'm like you. I know it's never going to be the same. They can't go back to replacing every device that comes in. But somewhere in the middle of that would be, a pleasant, middle ground. So, again, I'm not going to rant too much about it because to me, it's just sounded like I want special treatment or I want things to go back to the good old days like they were. No, that's not what I want. But we have to find our way somewhere halfway back to that. And,
Yeah.
I'm just to agree with what you said.
There's just too much dependency on these devices now, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah,
like what you said, find a reasonable solution for the customer, which a
yeah,
lot of times nowadays they don't even try to do. And
yeah,
we joke around and we don't want to be complete downsayers because I'm not going to switch to a Samsung phone for sure not, right? Because it would
yeah,
just be even
absolutely
worse
not.
than this. But I think Apple does care about their customers, but there's a line in I'm going to really show how old I am, but there's a part of The Sound of Music, the movie, where
Mhm.
the Von Trapps are getting ready to leave Austria, and the guy that had been working with the kids on becoming great performing group that was hosting the festival says, "I'm surely going to miss all of you," and then he turns around and says, "And I'm going to miss all the money I would have made off of you." Right, and sometimes that's how I feel about Apple is that they've swung clear over to the we've gotta maximize the money, but they're the most
Yeah,
valuable company in the world, probably the most profitable company in the world. How
yeah,
much more money do you need? Like, if I make 0.5% more by putting ads in Apple Maps, but I
yeah,
degrade the customer experience by 30%, those are trade-offs that they're deciding to make, and I don't agree with all of them. I know we said we didn't want to get into a bunch of opinions and on those kinds of things, but the reason we wanted to bring this up in this episode is to help you understand and decide whether you should buy AppleCare or
yeah,
not, and to know what you're going to be getting into if you buy it. So in my case, I buy it because I just default to express replacement and I'm going to pay the 99 bucks. Now, if you're close to an Apple store, you may decide I'm going to buy it, but I'm not going to default to $99 for express replacement. I'm going to deal with the hassle of going into the store. Or you may decide, you know what, it's not worth it to me. I'll run the risk of having to go in and pay $600, but I don't want to have to deal with the warranty stuff associated with
Yeah.
it, or I'm going to put it in a case. And so, my recommendation is that you strongly consider getting AppleCare. If for nothing else, then that one time you do shatter it, that you save a lot of money instead of paying the $600, even if it's a hassle to get there. But Jay, you're a little more nuanced, and that's okay. We just wanted to
Yeah.
share these opinions so that y'all can think about this, especially as we're going to start going into heavy Apple gear buying season, especially when it comes to iPhones in September.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for
Yeah.
today. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you buy AppleCare? Do you not buy AppleCare? Do you think Apple cares? Or is it more of a, yeah, I buy it because my experience would be way worse than it already is going to be? Like, is sort of my attitude right now, because it's just always a hassle and something to deal with. So,
Yeah.
we do appreciate everybody joining us. I did want to just let you know we've made some pretty significant changes to our website. So we've got up a couple of tutorials under a tips and tricks section on how to check your memory. Some of those kinds of things are up there. We've got more of our lists published. So we only had the iPhone and the iPad list, or the Mac, one of the two. Now we've got iPhone, Mac, iPad, AirPods, Apple Watch, our lists of which one you should buy under which circumstances. Those are all up there.
Hmm.
We've got, you could go in and subscribe and say, hey, let me know if you guys are going to do like a newsletter or something new. So we'll start getting that going if we get enough interest. And we've got the feedback form up and running. So it's not just a click on to submit an email, it's an actual feedback form. We've actually got a couple of things. So yeah, check out the website, The Tech Grandpas, or thetechgrandpas.com. That's where you can find all of that. Also, we're going to take a break here for just a couple minutes, but we're going to go ahead and record a new type of episode for us. So, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from somebody on YouTube, and then I had a family member say, oh, that would be a great idea, is for us to use our ancient knowledge and wisdom about how things used to be and talk about how things are today. So this whole idea we came up with, we're going to start recording and dropping a couple of times a month a retro versus modern episode. And it's
Yeah.
not comparing, saying which ones are better, because I hate that. Like, who's the greatest basketball player of all time? I don't even
Right.
like that conversation, because it's such a different style of basketball for LeBron
It
James
is.
versus Larry Bird,
Yeah.
right? And so that's not what we want to do. We want to actually just talk about what things were like then versus what things are now, what we liked then versus what we like now. That's this retro versus modern. And so for our first episode, we're actually going to do our top five, each of us, retro video games, and our top
Hmm.
five modern video games. So we'll be recording that. It'll probably drop after this episode. So if this one's out this week, then that one would drop next week. So we're going to try and alternate. 2 episodes a month will be these tech topics, and 2 episodes a month will be these retro versus modern topics. I'm actually pretty excited to do that. They'll probably be a little bit shorter episode. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, make sure you hit that like, subscribe button, share the show out either through the podcast or through YouTube, and we'd appreciate it. And that's all for me. Jason, any parting words?
No, that was all, guys. Get your Apple Care, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.